this entire incident was based on what had happened on December 11th. There was a felony level incident. It is not the same as a mutual combat between students or even an assault between students. This was a felony that was spreading through Calder Middle School. I was ordered to leave the school. In my opinion, that was criminal in itself. The fact that I was ordered to walk away from that school. No other officer came to relieve me at the school. No detective came to relieve me. No one else was even notified. That was it. I walked away from the school, and the principal, the school personnel could not believe that we just abandoned them. So if you want to turn around and talk about incompetence or neglect of duty, I've never been part of something so shocking. That's it. That's all.
Lieutenant Klein, I have to ask you a question on the heels of what his argument is. The day that he left that school, were you made aware about that texting issue? Were you aware of what was going on about the texting issue?
I was aware of the texting issue. I was not aware of the fight.
Okay. And still being aware of the texting issue, he was still ordered not to continue working, but to leave.
Everything had been passed up for detectives as far as I was concerned, and I was told and ordered by my boss to tell him to leave.
All right. What do you mean everything was passed up to detectives?
Detectives were well aware.
Did he done a report yet?
The detectives were well aware of what was going on. And
how did they find out?
When he called Detective Sergeant Bernardi.
So detectives were now in charge of that investigation?
As far as I'm concerned, they were aware of it. I was ordered to order Officer Defina to leave at that point.
And I appreciate that, and I'm not holding you at fault for following orders.
I was aware of the texting issue, yes.
Okay.
He was ordered to leave.
And the department was aware of it, and detectives were made aware of it through whom? Who notified detectives?
Officer Defina.
Did you notify?
Notified Detective Sergeant Bernardi, if I can finish.
Bernardi? Okay, that's how.
Notified Detective Sergeant Bernardi of that case, right, because myself and Captain Cecilia were sitting on some oral boards.
Understood.
There's also, at that time, there was a sergeant on duty that could have been notified.
Okay, so it was out of his hands.
He notified it to the Detective Sergeant Bernardi.
And he notified you of it?
I got the information through Detective Sergeant Bernardi, yes.
So you didn't get it to him?
No. Detective Sergeant Bernardi.
When he came in, you were aware that it had already occurred?
Yes.
Can I follow up on that? Lieutenant Klein, when he was asked to leave the school by you because you said there was no overtime or whatever, did you feel as though the situation had either resolved itself, or you felt that it was handled and there was no more to be done on that? Or why did you tell him to leave if it was such a serious situation? He's calling it a felony.
Okay, I'm not going to minimize two punches to another student's face, as he will, as far as a mutual combat. I'm not going to minimize that. That is an assault, and it is required under memorandum
I'm asking
agreement.
you about the other.
I understand.
Okay.
I understand. Yes, ma'am. I'm leading up to that.
Sorry, I apologize. Go ahead.
Again, I'm not going to minimize that. I'm going to get an order. I'm going to relay that order. That's what I'm told to do. He is going to leave now. That's going to be handled by detectives. That was my understanding at the time I gave him that order.
But it was excuse me if I might finish, but it was considered a felony. Didn't you consider that serious enough that he should finish or do whatever needs to be done to follow up? And that's a pretty serious issue if you read what.
And that decision had been made. May I?
Didn't you intercede with one of your supervisors about the seriousness of that type of crime?
That information, I was told by my supervisor to instruct him to leave. I'm not going to look at my supervisor and say no.
Who's that?
Captain Cecilia.
One thing I'd just like to touch on, it wasn't just that I was ordered out of the school. When I got back to the PD, I was also ordered out of the police department.
What do you mean?
When I was at the police department, Lieutenant Klein knew what I was working on. If there was some memo out there that says we're supposed to have a conversation about reports that are due or safe school reports, why is it that the second that he comes to me, there's no discussion? I explain it in there with the hands around my neck, and how you answer this question determines which way I twist my hands. Are you still on the clock? And when I said no, he said, get out of the station before Captain Cecilio finds out.
Who was present at the time of that?
There was, I know Sergeant Matakis was in the room. There was a couple other officers in the room, but they no longer work here either.
Lieutenant Klein, is that accurate information that he's presenting?
It is not.
It is.
I had no time with my hands around officers' neck. This came up in the grievance, and I'm gonna state it emphatically again, that I at no time did that. I patted his shoulder and joked with him, but I at no time said I was gonna choke him or make the appearance of that, and I take offense to that.
But you were joking with him about,
I asked him that you're not on my time because you're gonna get me in trouble, you need to leave. That was the way that the whole thing went down.
so you knew that he had, why did he have to leave? I'm a little confused. Why did he have to leave?
I was told by my supervisor
I
that
understand, overtime?
no overtime.
And what day was that, do you think?
Must have been a Wednesday or a Thursday.
Was it
Well,
Thursday?
I mean, what was the date, do you think?
That was the 11th.
It was the 11th when the sexual assault, not assault, the sexual texting, the sexting.
So on the 11th, you told him that there was no overtime?
And he had to.
I don't recall telling him that there was no overtime. I specifically said, you need to go. I can't have you being here. I've been told.
Well,
that
how
you need to
how
leave."
is it that you need to go and you need to produce the report? How does that work for you, that you're gonna get it done, if you need to go?
He made no mention of the assault report is what we're discussing right now. We're not talking about the sexting case. He made no mention of the assault report that day to me at all.
I wasn't afforded the opportunity to make that. Like I'm telling you, at my back, I came to the station, I sat down at the computer, and that's when I was told to leave before Captain Cecilio found out that I was still there.
What would happen if Captain Cecilio found that you were still in?
I don't know. I had already told him I wasn't on the clock, and that I wasn't doing work-related things.
You told him you were on the clock or?
Off the clock. When he said that, are you still on the clock? I said, no, I'm not. I'm just working on some things.
Did he tell you he was not on the clock, Lieutenant?
I don't recall him saying that.
But did you explain to him what kind of a situation? Can I
He
ask
knew the
Captain-
situation that was going on.
Captain Cecilio, if you would.
I'd like to know why you ordered him to leave.
Sergeant Bernardi came in, we were both in the oral boards. At that time, the incident was not ongoing. You have a felony sexting case among juveniles,
Right.
okay? Juveniles that are sending a picture amongst each other in the group,
Video.
video.
Yeah.
The chances of those juveniles being charged with a felony for that type of incident was slim and none.
According to whom?
We had it in the past, we had a similar incident, not a video, but pictures of kids taking pictures of themselves and sending it
Well,
throughout the school.
why was the Attorney General's office involved with this if it wasn't so serious?
We asked them to do we asked them to come on board. We tried to follow the same thing that Salem had done. But the charges also, if you look at even the Salem case and our case, we filed no charges.
Well, what was the sexting about?
It was a video of a student that was of their private parts sent to another student, which was now being sent to all the students.
And that's not serious?
It is serious, very serious. And we took it seriously, and we sent detectives to handle the case. However, we were going to have Officer Defina do the case.
That's not,
Did you send, which two detectives?
Detective Sergeant Bernardi was told to get the detectives and have them handle it.
And they went down to school?
I don't know if they went down to school. I don't think so, because the first time was we got out of there, Jason was already back at the station. The school was over, school day was over by the time we found out about it.
Wasn't the assault over?
Assault was also
Earlier in the
over,
day?
but we were never advised of the assault either. Otherwise, we would have sent more detectives.
Well, it seems like to me that there was a prioritizing going on that, according to what I've heard, that the assault held more priority
No.
than the other.
The assault we didn't even know about. The sexting was our priority at that point, getting detectives actively involved in that case.
So they,
They would handle that case. It wouldn't be a case, as Jason already said, he was over there.
okay,
I didn't say I was over my head. I didn't make that comment.
that's fine. That was investigated, you're telling me that was the start of the investigation, started before he got back? before he came back from the school, or when he got back from the school?
I didn't see him until I left the oral boards, he was already back at the station.
Oh, okay, but when did this investigation start on the sexting?
I have no
That
idea.
day? There must be
I
no
wasn't
time.
informed until Sergeant Bernardi came in.
There's gonna be police reports noted that day then.
There should be a lot of reports on that case, yes.
For that day, somebody would have had to said, we received this information about this, and this is where we're going with it.
Correct.
Is that the way you understand it, Lieutenant Klein?
It would be a report, yes.
They were doing it. They were working it.
So you asked him to, or told him to leave because you said he was, or you felt that he wasn't qualified to do the sexting case?
SROs would do the preliminary investigation, he would kick off the report. At this level, it would go to detectives. It's a felony level case.
Okay, so he would to do the report, the SROs to do the initial investigation and collecting of information so it can get past the detectives.
Get the basics so we can get a detective.
Right, get the ball rolling.
Correct.
Was he afforded the opportunity that day to finish or do a report? Did you do a report that day?
I did not.
Why, he wasn't given that opportunity, you were just sent home, and now we'll let detectives take over?
The sent home was,
No overtime.
I understand that,
Okay.
and I'm trying to explain that. What happened, Commissioner, is you have a brief conversation because he contacted Detective Sergeant Bernardi,
Right.
who came into the room while we were in between. I believe we had one more kid up to do. He said, this is what we got going on. And I said, well, get some detectives down there and get going on it.
Okay.
We finished our thing. When I came out, he was sitting in the patrol room, and it's like, what is he still doing here?
Okay. How are they supposed to
And
follow?
then I went
How are they
upstairs.
supposed to follow up? How are they supposed to start an investigation if they don't have the information from the responding officer?
They had already had some conversation with him, with what my understanding, and Detective Sergeant Bernardi was giving me enough information
Okay.
to determine that, hey, look, you need to kick this off, and somebody needs to get down there and start
Who
working.
filled out the initial one-on-one?
That would be, the initial one-on-one was done after the fact, I believe, by Jason.
But it was done after the fact, for no fault of his own, correct? Because he was
Correct.
told no overtime.
Correct? And he,
So he had to do the report. When did you do the report?
Did it at my house the next day.
next day.
When did it get submitted?
I'm guessing the first day I was back to work.
Were you going
maybe I was on vacation. I was on vacation, and I think I had a couple vacation days, maybe a 3-4 day weekend. So I wasn't back to work until Monday.
Just to follow up again on this and how this works, because I'm not really up to speed probably on that type of thing. But when somebody takes a report or is working on it, so to speak, don't you wait for the other two or the other person who's going to work on the investigation? Don't you wait for them to get there before you just leave? Is that the way it works, or?
I'm not clear what you're asking.
When we're talking about the sexting
Yeah.
issue, okay, and he has a conversation with Detective Sergeant Bernardi, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and isn't it normal for when you're going to do an investigation on something like that, that the person is there until the two or whoever is going to replace them or is going to be involved in the investigation gets there so that they can give them the information? Why is a person asked to leave and they go down there and they don't have anything to base themselves on? You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. It
Okay.
depends on the facts and circumstances you have at that time.
Oh, so
If you
a
have
person
people to
could leave.
interview, the detectives would interview them. If there's evidence to collect, they would collect evidence. It depends on the facts and circumstances they had at the time. The facts and circumstances I got in the oral boards was, this is the case that's going on. He's still there, and it was get down there and get people to start working. That somehow translates to you go home and get out of the station is a translation that it wasn't, you tell him to get out of here, you tell him to go home. That's not what happened. It was, you need to get this done, get working on it.
Okay, wait a minute.
I haven't,
Well, I'm not trying to put you guys at odds here, but I'm hearing one thing from one witness that says the order comes from up above, and I'm gonna obey that order.
the order was no overtime. They didn't want any overtime.
Is that
they
correct?
expect.
I
That's
understood-
that's a blanket order.
I understand that, but I understood it correctly, Lieutenant?
No overtime.
No overtime for the SRO, right? And he's to leave. Okay. Now you're telling, if I understand what you're saying, is it's somehow lost in translation that you have to leave.
The problem